Everything Republicans say about the Supreme Court and what they want to see out of judicial rulings has become the thinnest smokescreen imaginable for basically just giving Republicans whatever they want politically. This point was hammered home crystal clear in my recent interview with constitutional law scholar Kim Wehle. And so here's a clip from that interview, along with a few other examples of why the Supreme Court has gone so far off the rails and why the term strict constructionism, the whole philosophy that Republicans say they want judges to follow, is just code for give us what we want. This is, I think, what people in the center and the left have found most infuriating about this court. They seem to essentially be using strict constructionism as a very flimsy fig leaf for we're going to do whatever we want to do politically.
I believe in strict constructionists.
Governor, what does the term strict constructionist mean to you?
An Alito and a Roberts are the type of jurist, a strict constructionist.
And so I would pick people that would be strict constructionists.
What does that mean to you to appoint a strict constructionist to the U.S. Supreme Court?
I'd like people to follow the Constitution as it was written and intended.
This court is not intellectually consistent or honest. If they said, listen, we just think you have to narrow the jobs of judges, read the plain language, and go back to the framing, they're not doing that. It's not about some philosophy. And let me just give you an example. So Dobbs, basically the court said, we're going to go back to common law England where they were burning witches, but they did get to some arcane stuff about
some 17th century judge like Matthew Hale, right?
Yes, exactly. So they're picking and choosing the language that they think they're bound by as a matter of textualism. They're picking and choosing the parts of history as a matter of originalism. And honestly, Matt, I completely respect people having different approaches to interpreting ambiguous language. That's what lawyers do. But I cannot respect when people are not consistent, when they're hypocritical and not intellectually honest.
This is why I think many of us suspect that the entire idea of strict constructionism is, to use a legal term derived from the Latin, bullshit. It feels like complete bullshit. It's like Homer Simpson.
Facts are meaningless. You can use facts to prove anything that's even remotely true. Facts, Max.
You can find a precedent for anything anywhere. And in the Dobbs decision, if you have to reach back to the 17th century and Matthew Hale, who believed that women were literally the property of their husbands, and that is the precedent you're leaning upon for your 21st century interpretation of the Constitution, you are cherry picking it.
The Constitution is old and it's pretty short. What does due process mean? What is freedom of speech? What does speech even mean? None of this stuff is defined. So by definition, therefore, you need to fill in the blanks. And the problem I have with this originalism, textualism, is it's a smokescreen. People think that they're adhering to some algorithm, but you can't do that with old text. Precedent is supposed to constrain the Supreme Court, right? It's supposed to constrain. They're going haywire on precedent, not just Dobbs. That's a red flag that this court is being very aggressive about the law, not conservative.
Colorado throwing Donald Trump off the ballot, saying he's disqualified for having participated in insurrection. The 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court, in many ways, are Republicans quite openly. They go for Republican outcomes.
How the strict constructionists, how they actually apply strict constructionism to the 14th Amendment. It'll be interesting to see what kind of knots the Clarence Thomases of the world tie themselves into to get Donald Trump off of the hook.
Yeah, it does have this feeling of, hey, find me 11,000 votes. You can almost picture Amy Coney Barrett saying to her law clerk, find me a precedent here. Here's how I want to rule. Do they actually do this?
I did clerk for a federal judge, a district court judge in Washington, D.C., and he did do that. He would say, Kimberly, I want to rule this way. Go write me an opinion. It's not necessarily bad, Matt, right? We want people with power to act with integrity. That is what we want. Right now, the problem with the Supreme Court is there's no consequences. There's no accountability. This really did change when Mitch McConnell, as a matter of Senate procedure, got rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court justices. So prior to Justice Gorsuch, any president had to get 10 votes from the competing party for their candidate. So they had to get more mainstream people. Once it was just a bare majority and you really didn't need any Democratic support, Donald Trump was able to put people on the court that weren't in lockstep or even sensitive to where the populace is. And that's one of the reasons we're here.